So binary black and white rules don't work.
Yeah, that's why regulations always changed.
Yeah,
because,
it can't work.
Yeah.
But that's where the joy is. The joy, the artistry lies in the grey. It lies in the nuance.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming, really. You've got a lot of things going on. You got the book out. We'll get to the book, but I really want to dive into how probably the world knows you now through Drive to Survive, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to our studio in LA. Thanks for making the drive all the way down.
Thanks for having me.
Can you just tell us how you got started on the show?
Oh, goodness. Well, I started working for Liberty Media pretty much around the time that they bought into the sport and they took it over. Because before that, I was working with NBC Sports out here in the US, and before that, I was
doing Indy.
Sorry?
You were doing Indy.
Yeah, so I was the F1 pit reporter, but then they pulled me onto a couple of IndyCar races every year, so I'd hit like the Milwaukee Mile, and I'd do qualifying for the 500. Back in the days when NBC carried qualifying and ABC carried the race. So you had that kind of strange crossover between the two, which actually allowed the NBC crew to come and do the Monaco Grand Prix, because Diff would be calling quali, and then he'd head out to do the F1 in Monaco because ABC had the 500. And before that, I was with Speed Channel, and that was really my first kind of forays into TV. I've done some commentary before that, but really it was thanks to the US that I ever got a chance to do TV. And Liberty, when they took over, said, we want you to come over and really sort of front the digital division of everything we're going to do. Because they'd realized that by really focusing on the digital side of media, which hadn't been pushed under Bernie. You know, there was no YouTube channel. Social media was not really taken seriously. And actually, there was more of a move to take things away from
it was very
restricted. Yeah,
right.
Content creators just weren't a thing.
Yeah, right.
But Liberty were like, no, we're going to push this because this is a way to get new eyeballs onto the sport and to get new interest in the sport. And along with that came this Netflix series. Right. And very early on, I was asked by Sean Bratches, who was ex-ESPN, who was heading up the commercial division of Liberty's takeover of the sport, will you go in and do some interviews for this Netflix series? And I said, yeah, sure. You know, that's what I do. I interview the drivers, and that's my job.
Yeah.
And great, sounds cool. Not realizing, of course, that what Sean meant was, would I be interviewed for the show?
You thought that you were going to interview or consult or be part of the production.
Not be in front of the camera. So right from the outset, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I think for everybody involved in season one, and for those who weren't involved in season one, it wasn't at all what anyone expected it to be. You know, it's a very famous story that Mercedes and Ferrari didn't want anything to do with the first season.
Right. They weren't in the show.
Because of what they thought it was going to be. Right. And then when it finally was released, it was so very different to expectations. Right. And the stories being told were so different to expectations. And the impact that it went on to have was so unexpected and so huge that it completely changed the way in which sport as a whole, I think, looked at the art form of making a documentary. To the extent that people no longer said, you know, I mean, this is almost 10 years ago now. We're heading into season 7. They stopped saying we need a documentary, and they started to say we need a Drive to Survive. And almost every sport,
Drive to Survive for surfing.
Exactly, we need
for soccer,
for tennis, for all these things. We need a Drive to Survive. It became the byword for, I think, something that, you know, a documentary, but something that spoke to the real personalities behind the scenes, that kind of lifted the lid on the humanity of the sports person and those interesting, intriguing stories that you don't necessarily get to hear when the primary focus is on the fight for the championship. And where Drive to Survive did it so well, and where the Box to Box guys did it so well, was in that season one, not being able to tell the championship story because there was no Mercedes and Ferrari, and they were the competitors for the title that year. they went looking for human stories, and they found these great characters and these great stories. And it turned, without a Gunther, without a Daniel Ricciardo, would Drive to Survive have been the success that it ended up being? I mean, it's impossible to say now, but the chances are
probably not.
I think a lot less likely. Had Mercedes and Ferrari come on board in that first year, and the function of the show ultimately been about telling the championship fight, would it have been as successful? Arguably not, because it just would have... I think Box to Box always wanted to tell human stories.
But they were sort of like forced to do that, because they couldn't tell the championship
fact
story.
they had to meant that there was no opportunity to fall into the paradigm of what a sports documentary had been before. They had to do something different. And in doing that, I think it just opened up this great opportunity for storytelling.
Yeah. So you go to this first, meeting or whatever, and then they put you in front of the camera.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? I mean, why am I on this side of the camera?
Yeah, I look like a bum because it was winter testing, so I'm in this zip up sweater, haven't shaved, hair's all over the place. So those first Q&A sessions that you see in the very first series, I'm kind of like startled and dazed and really not camera ready. And also, they're firing questions at me, and I'm thinking, okay, how do I answer the question? How do I give something that is relatively intelligible? But also, how do I not drop myself in the shit? And so the cogs of my mind are working as fast as they can, but still kind of chunking around. And that's why I ended up talking in the kind of relatively drawn out, syncopated fashion that I did.
You're known to.
Yes, I wasn't attempting to imbue some dramatic effect with the pregnant pauses. It's literally how long it took my brain to.
They did a great job using those pauses.
Yes, and I think in later series they've maybe edited them and stretched them a little bit,
made them longer than they actually were.
It's great.
Awesome.
I love it.
So that's your first season, and then but production time. It takes time to get into the groove, right? Were they on it from the first interview, or did it take time for them to actually
I think with season 1, they were coming in very fresh, and so they didn't yet have the relationships with the teams and the drivers. They were really learning on the job.
Right. Everyone else, the teams and the drivers are, what the heck are these guys doing?
Yeah,
right? They were sort of...
They didn't know what to expect from Box to Box, and Box to Box didn't know what to expect from the sport as a whole.
Yes.
So the job that they did, I think, throughout that season of figuring out what the narrative arcs would be, and then also the job they did all the way through the post-production period of actually finding the right material to tell the stories that they wanted to in that first season were really incredible. And the job that they do each year, I think, is fascinating when you consider that they are shooting hundreds of thousands of hours of unedited raw footage in the paddock, in the garages, in the factories, in meetings, wild stuff that's happening out in the paddock, then all of the sit-down interviews as well. All of that is documented. All of that is, someone has to go through, listen to it, write it down, so they know where the quotes are, that they can pull it and slide it into the stories that they're
put
telling.
Those stories together.
I'll sit down with them 5 or 6 times a year for 5 hours at a time, and be interviewed and ask questions and try to bring some form of understanding to what's going on at that present moment. They then take that and all the other interviews and cut it together and create something that resembles this brilliant narrative arc. But so much of that is done between the end of the season and launch. So you're looking at a 3-month period there.
But they're interviewing throughout the year. Right? Yeah.
But the stories only reach their conclusion in Abu Dhabi.
At the very end, yeah.
So, and sometimes, when the season ends and stories break, and like Gunther leaving Haas, I think happened, pretty soon after the season finished. So they have to slide all these stories in. They do an incredible job in a very short space of time.
Yeah, it's a brilliant show.
It's great being a part of it, but really just to watch that and see what they're able to do with so much footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the show has changed F1 in a sense? Because now everything's sort of out in the open, and we all know like who has these rivalries and who kind of like, jives with one another, or like, do the drivers act different now, or they're pretty much the same?
I think they're pretty much the same. I think you just get a better impression of who they are and a better awareness of that. I think it's just opened them up more to the public, particularly team bosses. Team bosses are mega stars in a way that they've never been before. They were always superstars to us in the sport or in the industry. You think of a Colin Chapman or a Ken Tyrrell or an Enzo Ferrari or whoever, mega stars for us. Right. But globally, were they part of a social pop culture kind of zeitgeist? No. Yeah. But now a Gunther Steiner, a Toto Wolff.
Yeah, they're rock stars.
Total rock stars. Total rock stars. So I think that's quite different.
Do you think they've gotten used to the fame? Are they loving it a little bit? Too much? What do you think?
Every now and then you can kind of see. Yeah, I think they know when they're on camera. Yeah. But they recognize very much how their words are carried and the weight that their words can carry. Yeah. And so I think they were always very aware of the public statements that they made. Yeah. But now seeing how they're used either through the show or through just a normal weekend broadcast. Formula One politics has always been Machiavellian. And so it's fascinating. It's always been fascinating watching how the team bosses utilize the media to get their point across or get their desires met.
Now it's just like out in the public now.
Yeah,
it's like,
It's
before it was like going on in the back rooms or whatnot.
Totally. I remember. What was it? 15 years ago. We were looking at a breakaway championship. Over the British Grand Prix weekend, and the teams all went away and made an agreement, and the FOTA, Formula One Teams Association, was going to start a rival championship and leave Bernie with no teams, no cars, no nothing, and go and do their own thing. Those were Machiavellian times, right? Yeah. Those team bosses back then. If we'd had a Drive to Survive in those days,
oh my God,
I would have loved to have seen that. What was going on, the back room, king making that was happening all then. Those were fascinating times. But I think, through Drive to Survive has allowed us to see more behind the scenes, more how the teams work, how the team bosses work, and we've had an era of relative sort of politeness and calm in F1 politics. Yeah. So it was great seeing Toto and Christian, arguing with each other about their car designs and all of that. In Canada, that was pretty cool. I like seeing that.
Which drivers are like they seem pretty approachable, right, on the show? Yeah. Like which ones are like the easiest to talk to?
I think they all are. They love doing what they do. We're incredibly honored to be able to have so much time to talk to them and to gain an insight into their craft and their skills. But then at the same time, there are so many TV crews. There's so much media. There's so many print outlets, web outlets, that there is a lot of draw on the drivers' times, and there will, naturally be a frustration that they have to keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over. Yes. And some drivers take to it far easier than others. Yeah. Some really dislike it and make no mystery of that. Others just get on with it and can provide something a little different to everybody that they talk to. But no one's really that hard. They're all pretty easy, pretty great to talk to.
I mean, if you're going to make it all the way up to Formula One, they've had some sort of media training, and they're
yes, and they've been doing it for years.
Yeah, they've been
as
doing it
well.
since
They
they
do
were-
this in
yeah,
carts.
exactly.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Right. How about you though? Do you like read the YouTube comments and stuff like that?
Yeah, don't do that. Never read the, never read the comments.
I never do.
It's difficult not to.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And sometimes you search out the negative ones
Yeah.
because
You just want some feedback, right? And sometimes
they're
you're just
quite
like,
the negative ones are quite fun.
Yeah.
But also it's a weird thing. The positive ones used to be the majority, and so then the negative ones really jumped out.
Mm-hmm.
But when the majority, because of the way that social media's got, when the majority are negative, the positive ones actually start to jump out. So that's a nice,
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
that's a nice flip.
Yeah,
No, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody walked past you on the street that you didn't know and
they wouldn't,
and just called you an idiot,
right.
would you pay it any mind? No. So why do you online? I guess it's because it's
public.
written there, it's
Yeah.
public. But I was having a chat on another podcast back in the UK during the week, and I said, look, you know, when I first started out, I was at Formula One magazine back in the day in the mid early 2000s, and I was in charge of the letters page.
Yeah.
And so this was the official magazine of Formula One, international publication. And I said, how many letters do you think we got in a month? Bearing in mind the best letter won a PlayStation. Right? How many letters do you think we got in a month? And the guess was about 150.
Okay.
And I said, if we got 10, we were lucky. Right?
Right.
The number of months I had to make up letters
Right.
so that we could fill the letters page.
Sure.
But then one of my mates
Yeah.
ended up with the PlayStation because nobody had actually
Right,
sent a
right.
letter in that month. You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Because back in the day when you had to put pen to paper
Actually, you had to write
express
something.
your thoughts.
Put on the stamp. and
Bingo,
send
put the
it in,
address
right?
on stamps, take it to the box and post it. No one bothered
No one bothered.
to either talk about the sport that they loved or to pull us up on an opinion piece we'd written or anything. No one bothered.
Wow.
When you can just type it and send it out into ether and not think about it again.
You get hundreds,
But
thousands.
Because
Yeah.
I don't know, like, are the people just howling at the moon? Do they think that once they've expressed it, it's gone, and for them it's better to have it out than to keep it in? I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you direct it at somebody,
Yeah.
like, words have weight.
Yeah.
You know, and they have an effect, and they really have an effect on people.
Yeah.
And I think people have forgotten how heavy the burden of their words can be.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah. That's why
if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Is what my mum always said.
Yeah. That's why my kids aren't on social media.
It's a very wise thing.
You know.
But it's funny because, you know, my daughter's a teenager and her interaction with social media is very different to what I thought it would be. Almost to the extent of, you know, when I was growing up, my dad read a newspaper.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, God, newspapers, boring.
Yeah.
You know, and so maybe the fact that we spend all our time on our phones, our kids will kind of look at that and be like, ugh,
Yeah.
you know, that's boring, isn't
Yeah,
it? I
yeah.
hope.
Yeah,
But there is a different interaction, really, really different interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, you know, I mean, we don't need to get into it, but there's, you know, a lot of issues with you know, social media and teens, and it's not a
Massively.
Yeah. How's it like in the UK? Is it kind of the same?
It's
Yeah.
very much the same.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous place.
Yeah.
The level of misinformation, disinformation, the ability to safeguard those you care about, the ability that people have just to jump into DMs and say horrible, threatening, demeaning things is, I don't know what it is about humanity that has dropped us to a point where it's considered acceptable to be outwardly cruel and threatening to someone that you know, someone that you don't know. When did it become the norm to say these awful things?
Yeah.
Look at it and think, oh, that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
I'll send that.
And out on the street, you know, they wouldn't do that to you, right? If they saw
Well,
you,
you'd hope not.
right?
But you don't. But you don't know.
Yeah.
But I think part of the biggest issue with social media, particularly with, there are some forms that seem to be a nicer
I heard that the
place.
TikTok in China is super positive.
Now, there we go.
They censor it, so
Instagram
it's-
for me has always seemed quite positive in terms of some of the comments. Some of them are quite negative and nasty, but the majority seem quite nice. Twitter, or whatever it's calling itself this week, seems to be just a cesspool.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest issue with that is part of the reason it became so successful was down to the algorithms and it showing you what it thought you wanted to see.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately a bubble of confirmation bias,
Right.
where you follow the accounts that reflect back to you the opinions you already have. Because why would I follow the accounts of people who disagree with me, things I don't want to see, opinions I don't want to hear?
Right.
So from that perspective, all you're having reflected back to you is black and white, right or wrong.
Right.
There is no middle ground. There is no grey.
Yeah.
There is no nuance. There is no debate. That's not real. That's not life. I was brought up in a world with 4 television stations. We had however many newspapers in the UK, but your resource of information was quite limited. So the internet was supposed to open up limitless information.
Yeah.
That would inform us
Right.
in our debates and our opinion making, and as a society, surely lead to the most open, brilliant, intelligent species we'd ever been. But all it's done is cast us into smaller and smaller groups where we just confirm back to ourselves the things we already think we believe. There is no scope for debate anymore. There is no grey area. There is no nuance.
It's too much now. Yeah.
It's just black and white.
Right. Yeah.
And actually, you don't agree with me?
Yeah. We won't show it to you. Right. It's like it just becomes.
But that's not life.
Yeah.
Because then you're just having people feed you falsities.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the issue.
It's
with.
yeah. How do you get out of that?
Yeah.
How do you reverse that?
Yeah. How do we? What do you think? I mean, how with? So we have.
Burn it all to the ground.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I know, right?
You know?
But on the other hand,
build libraries. Get kids going back to libraries.
Yeah.
Like when I was at university, I didn't have the internet to do all my research. I had to go to the library and I had to read through the books and find the right passage and actually go and talk to people and do my research for myself.
Yeah.
But again, because the internet should have opened up all this limitless information, and it's just it hasn't. It's just closeted us.
Yeah.
But also closeted us into this position of thinking that we know everything because we have it at our fingertips, and we don't.
Yeah.
We can all learn from everyone that we meet, and we should be listening to. We should be listening to the arguments and the thoughts and the opinions of people that don't agree with us, because it can inform everything that we believe. Because nothing on earth is black and white.
No.
You look at racing.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make rules of engagement on track and overtaking rules black and white.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't make black and white rules about overtaking because every move is different.
Yeah.
Every single move on every single corner will be individual, completely unique by its very nature.
Yeah.
So binary black and white rules don't work.
Yeah, that's why regulations always changed.
Yeah.
Because
It can't work.
Yeah.
But that's where the joy is. And that's in life, in argument, in racing, the joy, the artistry lies in the grey. It lies in the nuance.
Yeah.
And that's where the brilliance of it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've made a career, writing about this kind of stuff, talking about this kind of stuff. Right? Did you always want to be a journalist?
Yeah, I wanted to be a writer from the age of 13. That's all I wanted to do. I had no delusions of TV or anything like that.
Yes.
It was when Senna died, my father bought me my first copy of Autosport and Motoring News. And those were the words that helped me come to terms with the loss of my idol. And the great journalists like David Tremayne and Nigel Roebuck and the guys who were writing back then, they made me want to be an F1 journalist. That's all I wanted to do, was write about the sport. I love getting back to writing. It's lovely being able to talk about it, but being able to write about it it's where I started, and it's where I think it was my first love, my true love.
What do you say to kids that are, out in the internet world that we were talking about right now, but they want to become, writers, or they want to become journalists.
Yeah.
But there's all of this like crap, right? Because of the internet. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
And everybody has an iPhone now. What do you say to, kids that want to become journalists and want to like write stuff about, motorsports or whatever?
I think the most important thing for if kids want to become journalists or broadcasters, it's just I think it's a lesson for whatever you want to be in life, is that the most powerful tool you will have is something that ultimately you already have, and that's your voice, your individuality, the essence of what makes you. If you want to be a writer or you want to be a broadcaster, if you want to be a musician or a singer or an actor, don't try to be what someone else is.
Yeah.
If you try to sing and sound like another singer, then you're going to be a great tribute act, but you're not going to be you. You're going to be yourself. If you want to be a broadcaster or a commentator, don't try and sound like Lee Diffie. Don't try and sound like Alex Jakes. Try to be you. Just sound like you. If you want to be a great writer, write like you. Write
how did you get your first step? How did you get your first chance to?
So I met David Tremaine. I went to the Autosport show.
Okay.
At the Birmingham NEC when I was at university, and they were just launching Formula One magazine, and David was writing for them, and I recognized him from obviously following him for years. And I went up to him and I said, I'd really love to be a Formula One journalist. And so he actually gave me his email address and said, send me 1,000 words on anything. So I did, and we stayed in touch. And then a little bit later on, I decided I was going to write my university thesis on the politics of Formula One. So David put me in touch with Joe Sayward. And Joe sent me like 14,000 words on the politics of Formula One, and my thesis only needed to be 12,000 words, right? So we're like, I'm in, this is great.
Right.
And Joe said, listen, David tells me you want to be a writer, send me some stuff. So I sent him an article, and he said, would you like to write a monthly piece for grandprix.com? Can't pay you, but would you? I was like, yeah. I'm getting my name published. Yeah, this is great. Like, you're in a band at university, you're playing free gigs at the pub. Like, that's what it was.
There's a stage, I'll take it, right?
Bingo.
Yeah.
And then I left uni, and I get a call from David, and he's like, we've got 2 weeks, basically work experience, right? We just need you to help us collate the news reports for the annual, when F1 Mag was still doing an annual.
Right.
So I did that, and at the end of those 2 weeks, I turned up with a sleeping bag and a pillowcase, and DT said, what's that for? I said, I'm not going home. And he said, we weren't going to ask you to, we'd love you to stay as staff writer.
Yeah.
And that was the start of it nearly 25 years ago.
That's great.
That was the first gigs.
Yeah, you just have to, get started, right?
This is it, and it's
don't be afraid. You have to approach and just get started.
Today there are so many more outlets than there were 25 years ago. You want to make your name by being on TikTok or on you're making your Instagram reels, or when I started out, there was you couldn't write a blog.
Yep.
You couldn't make vlogs and put them up on YouTube or start a YouTube channel. Right. There was no way of getting your voice out there.
Yeah. So there's no access to the world.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So there's it's a double-edged sword, because you're ultimately doing a lot of your learning in the public eye.
Yes.
And that's tough.
Yeah.
And also because of the way that we just discussed social media it can be incredibly harsh and a real shark pool to jump into, where you will get eaten alive. And if you're just starting out, you can be deterred very, very quickly.
You need really thick skin.
And how do you develop that if you're just starting out?
Exactly.
It's really hard. So there is an argument, I guess, to finding that voice, finding that style before you put it out there in the public. Because you can, and this is the problem that you have with content creation as well, is how much are you creating your content to suit your market, and how much are you doing it to actually suit yourself and the stories that you think need to be told? Because you can, if you're just doing it for clicks, and you're just doing it for the numbers, there's a very easy format that you can follow, and you can just create clickbaity crap that people will click on, and it will get you the numbers. But if you're trying to inform and you're trying to actually educate, well, maybe it won't get the same numbers as the clickbait crap.
Right.
But you'll feel better in yourself with what you're doing. Yeah. So ultimately, you have to figure out
where you want to be,
and what you want to be, and what you want to do.
Yeah, true. Great stuff. So let's shift gears a little bit. COTA just happened here in the U.S. Mexico is happening this weekend. I guess it's a quadruple header, America's quadruple header, right? We're staying.
So triple header, but then with so it's Austin, Mexico, Brazil, then a couple of weeks off, then Vegas.
Right? You get to travel around the world. First of all, where's your favorite America's location?
Well, this is my first week in LA, so I would move here in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
I love this place.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
What do you like about LA? I love it here, but
I love everything about it. Yeah. So the weather's impeccable.
Yeah. It beats Britain.
Everything does. The topography of the place, I love it. I love the fact that it doesn't feel imposing. It's very open.
Yeah.
So I'm staying up in West Hollywood, and the trees are bigger than most of the buildings, which I love.
Okay.
The views are stunning. The sunsets and the sunrises are beautiful.
Right.
I actually think the town is beautiful, and my wife said it's not beautiful, and I was just like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Like, you think I'm attractive, which is weird, so your opinion is, I'm not counting on anything to do with how good things look. But you know, I love it. Yeah. People seem great. Everyone was like, the traffic's a nightmare. It's not that bad.
Okay.
Like, coming from the UK, also, like, I'm going to Sao Paulo next week. That's bad traffic.
Yeah.
Mexico City, that's bad traffic, right? LA is a walk in the park compared to those places. So I'm not going to hear any complaints about LA traffic.
Yeah,
it's fine.
People like to complain about it.
I love it. I haven't had In-N-Out Burger yet, but everyone says that I need to do that. So
then you got to take
that's the next thing I got to do. I love it.
Yeah.
I could see myself.
I mean, I'm from Japan, right? And I love Japan, but I love visiting Japan because of the food and my family.
Whereabouts in Japan?
Tokyo.
Oh,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, but I love living here though, because the weather in Japan, like right now, October is not that bad, but I don't know if you've ever been to Japan in August, but it is brutal.
Normally, we were either really early in the year or really late in the year. I don't think we ever did August time. Yeah. No, like October. Yeah.
October's nice. October's really nice, but it's just really...
It's Suzuka, and it's like always wet.
Yes. It was my first, we were talking yesterday, my first Grand Prix was Suzuka.
Amazing. What year?
89.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Oh my goodness, what a race.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yes.
So you literally went from one of the all-time great Grand Prix, like literally era-defining races.
Yeah. So we were talking about it yesterday. So one of my buddies at college, his dad used to run the Honda team, the Sakurai-san.
No way.
Before the guy that was running it at the time. And he was a son, and we got tickets. And he was like, you want to go? I was like, of course I want to go. Like 3-4 of us, took the Shinkansen
down to Nagoya.
To Nagoya, and it was great.
Yeah,
it was great. It was the best thing. And then I've been hooked ever since. Yeah, that was like
that'd do it.
Yeah. Because Formula One in Japan was huge.
Oh my God. Yeah,
it was like Senna and Prost, and like everybody was like in it, and the Fuji TV had a great broadcasting team, and
Nannini was racing back then, and Suzuki. Guri Suzuki.
Aguri, Aguri was the guy, and then Nakajima was still there too.
Nakajima, of course, because he was Ayrton's teammate at Lotus.
Yeah, so those were some good times. What's your favorite Japanese food? Do you like Japanese food?
I do. I love Japanese food. What is my favorite Japanese food?
Do you have a terrible Japanese food experience?
No. Do I have a terrible Japanese food? Yeah, I do. Raw chicken I had.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. That was unexpected.
Yeah.
I was not I was not expecting that to happen.
Raw chicken is a hard one for foreigners to swallow.
Yeah. Because I was like, what is this? And they were like, raw chicken. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening.
It's, you know, a particular, you got to get used to it.
Yeah.
It's an acquired taste for sure. Yeah.
And I don't have a favorite. I just want to eat everything.
Yeah.
Like literally everything.
Yeah, because like in Japan, the Italian food is good. The French food is good. The hamburgers are good in Japan. I mean, the food in Japan.
McDonald's in Japan is insane. You can't call it fast food because the time and the care and everything that goes into it. Like it comes out in a cardboard collar that you take off, and the burger is perfect underneath. Yeah. I mean, it's impeccable.
And they have the special ones that they only have in Japan too.
Yeah.
Like the shrimp burgers and the croquet
Honestly, burgers. That's crazy.
Yeah.
For me, that's crazy. No, I love Japan. I'd spend a lot more time out there if I could.
Okay, so we got a little bit sidetracked, but
we did. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to. So you're heading down to Brazil. You're not. You're skipping Mexico and you're heading down to Brazil. My question for you is, we're getting close to the end of the season, right? We're in the final quarter, I guess. Does Lando have a chance?
I think he has a chance.
Yeah. How good are they?
So I've been saying for months that I think Lando has a chance, and I actually think Lando's going to do it. Mm-hmm. But
hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Spirit Almond, all natural Japanese flavored almonds, which are made here locally in LA. They use whole California almonds and season them with only natural food ingredients, without any preservatives, flavor enhancements, or artificial ingredients at all. They come in these 1 ounce packs with about 7 grams of protein, and come in a variety of Japanese flavors, delicious Japanese flavors. Miso, they have koji salt, black garlic, seaweed, curry, and Japanese mustard. They're really, really delicious. So go to Spirit Almond, that's almond without an S, .com to check them out. Spirit Almond comes in 6 packs for $14.99 and also 12 packs of $26.99. You can subscribe and save 15%. They offer a variety of gift packs with a bunch more. So check them out at spiritalmond.com. They're actually a family-owned business right here in LA. I know them personally. They launched the business right around the pandemic, so I was really happy for them. But mostly they're delicious. I take them. I have them here in the office. I take them on the run. I'm snacking on them while I'm driving. So I'd love for you guys to check it out. Go to spiritalmond.com. That's spiritalmond.com without the S. Check them out and tell them Taro sent you.
He's been hamstrung by 2 things: the team not recognizing that they had the opportunity and backing him
earlier,
and favoring him earlier in the season.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Because Oscar's the better long-term prospect, and if you watch them and you look at their racecraft this year in particular, Oscar is more instinctive, is more incisive, is, I think, proving himself to have that killer instinct that maybe Lando lacks. And I think that maybe that's why he needed McLaren to really back him earlier to ease his journey towards the championship, because I'm not convinced at the moment, and from everything that we're seeing, that if you're going to take on Max, number one, you've got to be smart, and number two, you have to be ruthless, because Max will bite back hard. I don't know if Lando has that in him.
The enough fight. He has fight.
Oh, he has fight, but I don't know if he has
as much as Max does.
I don't know.
I
don't know many people that do have as much fight as Max.
Yeah.
But if you look at some of the moves that Oscar's pulled off this year, and some of the moves that Oscar's pulled off on Lando this year, he's not waiting 3 laps, 4 laps to pull it off. It's done before Lando even knows he's there.
Yeah.
And what we saw in Austin was symbiotic of what's happened earlier in the year. Look back to Austria. Lap after lap after lap after lap. You can't keep showing Max the same hand of cards because he knows what you've got. You have to try and do something different, or you make the move as soon as you get to him. You don't give him the opportunity, and it's Max, right? If you go on the outside, he's pushing you wide every time. Every time. You've got to dupe him and cut on the inside. And force him to the outside. It's, I don't know. It just feels like he's. Why would you keep doing the same thing when you know it doesn't work?
And it's against Max.
And you got to try double hard. Double hard against Max.
So Wikipedia says that you raced against Max.
I shared a track with Max. I can't say I raced Max because that would mean that our skill sets were comparable. They weren't. I got invited out to the US, to Palm Beach.
Fun.
It was great. It was really, really great. Just for me to gain an understanding and an insight into these guys when they were coming through.
How old was Max at that time?
16.
Okay.
I was 33.
So it was like 10 years ago?
Yeah, 10 years ago, exactly. It was 2014. I'd never driven a single-seater before.
No.
Never driven open wheel. It was a real learning experience.
To get a feel of like what these guys are going through?
Oh, yeah. And an understanding of... So for me, the first time that I actually took the car through the corner faster than I thought it could go, and the whole thing just went... And I'm like, oh, that's what aerodynamics are for. Okay, now I get it. That's downforce, right? That's what it feels like. And then when you pick up, flag on your tires, you're like, oh, that's what that feels like. And then slipstream, oh, that's what that feels like. Because you know the theory and you've been talking about it for years and commentating on it because you understand the concept. But then to actually experience it, like...
That must have been great for
huge.
Be able to talk about it now.
Oh, it was massive. And it was really funny because, so you had open data and so you could see what everyone was doing and everyone could see that Max was just this generational talent. But first race, we're sitting there. Luca Baldessari, who used to engineer Michael Schumacher, was running the whole program. And he's like, right, quickest reaction, best race start. This guy right here. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm feeling really cocky, right? Really smug. And Baldo's like, don't look too smug, Will. And I was just like, what? This is like
I've made a wrong career choice here.
But this is the only thing I'm going to have all week, right? Let me have this. And he's like, how long have you been driving a car? And I'm like, well, I passed my test when I was 17. I'm 33, so like 16 years.
Yeah.
And he's like, Max, how old are you? And Max is like, I'm 16. I was like, right. So, Will, you've been driving as long as Max has been alive. If your clutch control wasn't a little bit better than these children, like, there would genuinely be something a little bit concerning. And I was like, couldn't even let me have that one thing. But no, very realistic to it. And very grateful to have had that opportunity. And also to have seen someone like Max take those first formative steps into open wheel racing. And just to see from that first moment how genuinely incredible he was, and the kind of the sudden awareness on those he was racing against of, oh God, we thought we were going to be good, but this guy's doing these things.
And he's always been that brutal, like cutthroat. Right. As far as I've seen,
he's just, he's generational.
Yeah. Speaking of generational, your countryman, Lewis, will he ever be back on top? What do you think?
I hope so. There's a huge part of me that thinks that just the modern generation of car that doesn't suit him, doesn't suit his driving style. Right. There is a correlation between Lewis dropping off and the change in car in 22.
Yeah, for sure.
I also don't think him continuing at Mercedes was necessarily healthy. It feels to me almost like, you stay in a relationship.
Should have left a little earlier.
I think the I don't want to say, it's not like PTSD, but, the kind of, the constant reminder of what was taken from him.
Yeah.
Being in that garage, in that environment with those people, it's like they almost all need to split
Yeah, yeah.
in order to get
Fresh
over.
start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like your partner cheats on you, but you stay
Yeah.
together. But there's something that's just never quite right, and I think there might be an element of that for him. But certainly, I don't think the new rules have helped. So 26 new cars, an opportunity for Lewis to, hopefully find something that is more to his liking.
Yeah.
And I also think linking up with Fred Vasseur is a brilliant way to go full circle.
Right.
Because Fred was his team boss in Formula 3 and GP2, and I believe fervently created the most potent version of Lewis Hamilton that has ever existed. And I include the 7-time Formula 1 world champion version of Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
The rawness of that kid in Formula 3 and GP2, we've never seen that untapped in Formula 1. We've never seen that unlocked.
Oh, okay.
There was always, when he was at McLaren, he was always kind of like, they were trying to restrict him, pigeonhole him into this
Fit
thing.
in a box.
Yeah. And similarly, even at Mercedes, he was never that free.
Okay.
And now he is Sir Lewis Hamilton, the greatest of all time. And he gets to hook up with the team boss who really, was in love with that raw version of Lewis. Yeah. If he can help Lewis to untap that version of himself again, it's going to be the greatest comeback
I want to see that
sport's ever seen. It's going to be huge.
I think the fans want to see that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You imagine it.
Yeah.
26 in that Ferrari.
Last what, 4 or 5 years, it hasn't been great for him.
No.
Yeah.
I would, I think everybody. I honestly don't think there's a single person that watches Formula 1 who doesn't think that Lewis is worthy of an 8th title and how great it would be to have Lewis win an 8th world championship. And if he does it at Ferrari with Fred, the whole thing coming together, I think would be absolutely
epic. Yeah, that
majestic.
would be epic. Yeah. How about some of the younger generations that's coming up?
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I love a generational shift.
Yeah. It's happening, but do you think it's happening quicker now, though?
Yeah,
Right.
and we never expected it. I mean, we all knew Antonelli was coming, right?
Yep.
Because that's been clear. Toto believes he's like a Max Verstappen type talent, so we knew that Antonelli was being fast-tracked. But to see the job that Behrman did when he stood in on both occasions for Ferrari and Haas this year, knockout. You see what Colapinto's doing.
Oh, yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
I don't think James Vowles expected Colapinto to be that good. I don't think Franco expected Franco to be that good.
Yeah.
Against all expectations, he has announced himself as somebody who cannot be ignored for the future. Liam Lawson, every time he gets into a Formula 1 car, is box office. Yeah, it's...
Do you think the
really
advance
promising
in
times.
sim racing and just access to technology has enabled the young kids to grow up sort of faster than in the past?
I don't know. I'm really not sure what has made the difference. Because you used to have limitless testing and even if kids were jumping in young, they'd have 20,000 kilometers under their belts of testing. I think that's a great question. And I don't know what the answer is.
Right.
I will take that and ask the guys next time out.
I'm just interested.
How are you doing this?
Yeah, why?
Because it is fascinating what's making the difference for them.
They're getting younger for sure.
They're getting much younger. I mean, we still have we did have the Max Verstappen clause of you're not allowed in until you're 18, but the FIA have now changed that and you can be 17. So maybe Red Bull gets put Lindblad in at some point.
But like in the Olympics, they were saying, for skateboarding, for example, they're 12, 13-year-olds are winning gold medals.
Sky.
Exactly, right? And they attribute that to like YouTube because they're able to check out tricks that you weren't able to see back in the day until you saw it on TV or like...
Or you played it on the Tony Hawk game.
On a video game, or my day in a magazine. You saw Christian Hosoi in the air, but you don't know how that happened.
Yeah,
and
right.
If you're a kid in Japan, there's no way you can replicate that.
Yeah.
But now, like with YouTube, you can check out new tricks immediately, and doing it, right?
Yes.
Come on, you know.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, I guess, with sim racing, how much that's actually opening it up for them.
Game, you know, the kids are playing games. You know.
And and it's all muscle memory, it's all experience, it's all knowledge, and the more time you're actually on track, the more you're learning.
4 years old, you're doing it every day at home.
Exactly. Yeah. Probably
That's my theory.
Do you know what? I think that's a damn good theory.
It's a hypothesis. Okay, let's talk about your book.
All right.
Your buddy Ben sent me the book.
Ah, cool.
I didn't read the entire thing, but I think it's a great book.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing this book. I mean, why did you feel the need to write this book now?
So originally I was going to do a kid's book.
Yeah.
And then I realized that it wasn't just children who might like a bit of a look back through the past of Formula One and a bit of an education on the history of the sport, but there's a whole generation of fans who are coming to the sport really fresh, really new, through Netflix, and then their wider group of friends who they're convincing to come and watch the races with them, who have been watching for less than 5 years, you know?
Yeah.
And we all have a time with a sport when we're getting into it, and we all have a first race or a first match, a first game. And particularly in Formula One, I think we almost take for granted that the people watching know not just the basics, but like have quite an in-depth knowledge of the history of the sport.
Yes.
There's a presumed knowledge base.
Right. You drop a name, and the kids who learned Formula One through Drive to Survive have never heard of
Ayrton
Prost
Senna.
or Senna,
Right.
For example.
And we take that for granted.
Yes. And we drop it.
Yeah,
and
but like Sebastian Vettel.
Right.
Or, even Michael Schumacher. If you've been watching for less than 5 years, you never saw Michael race.
Yes.
So how do you teach a brand new fan base in a way that, hopefully isn't condescending, but at the same time isn't going to be 5,000 words, two small photographs, and so wordy that you kind of get lost in it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do something that was real simple.
Right.
And maybe if you're engaged in an online debate with somebody and they say, well, he's not as good as Jim Clark, and you're like, I've heard that name, and you can just go, okay, hold on, right, let me flick through, let me find Jim, and then you're like, a couple of minutes later, 5 minutes later,
You've got a page.
I've got the basics.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
not everything,
Right.
but I've got the basics, and if you want to go and do deeper dives, that's what the internet's there
You've
for.
got all the champions in here.
Yeah, so it's the first section is what is Formula One today, tech regs, and the tires and all of those kind of flags, all those kind of things, and how the sport works. And then we go on a decade by decade journey through the sport, explaining how the decade went down, calendar and regulation and all that kind of stuff. And then the champions that were crowned for the first time in that decade, and their stories. One driver who wasn't a champion, but I felt had all the attributes that they could and should have been. A couple of other drivers of note, the teams that defined the decade, and then one great race to kind of encapsulate the era.
Right.
And we go through that for 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah. No, I love
noughties, tens, and today.
Yeah, I love how you broke it down into the decades too. And it is called the Illustrated History of Formula One. So you got great imagery.
Yeah, Davi,
not just
our
words.
Brazilian illustrator,
Yeah.
I think he did a great job.
Yeah.
And particularly with like some of the explanatory stuff at the start as well. I loved the illustrations at the start.
He did a really
the run
good
through
job.
F1 and how does a pit stop work?
Yeah, like the pyramid here too, like how Formula One is.
Yeah, sits at the top.
It sits at the top of the pyramid. I love how because it's hard
to visualize.
To visualize that.
Yeah. And that's how many people are doing it. You get thousands in karting, and then rising up all the way through. It was so fun to put it together, and it was the kind of thing where when I was young, I was reading. These kind of books by Maurice Hamilton and Nigel Roebuck and the great writers from the 90s, and I make a point of thanking them at the end, because my knowledge was based on reading these kind of things when I was young, and I realized that there maybe wasn't something like that for today's fan base and today's audience, and particularly those who have got in through Drive to Survive. So I thought that the guy who explains all the basic stuff on Netflix could probably explain all the basic stuff in a book and go all the way back to the start.
It's a New York Times bestseller.
It is.
Congratulations.
But how mind-blowing is it? So crazy for me and the guys at Penguin, because we never expected that in a million years. But what does that say about how big this sport has got in the US? That you can release a book on the history of Formula One and it hits the New York Times bestseller list. Like, I'm so grateful.
Before you leave, you got to sign this book for us.
Of course. But like, so grateful that it happened. But then wowed by the fact that reflects so positively on how big the sport is getting out in the US at the moment. It's crazy.
Yeah, everyone knows it now, and everybody will at least watches. Maybe not the weekend races. Actually, they watch the show on Netflix.
Massive,
which is crazy, because I heard some people don't even watch the races because they want to wait for season 7.
So I met some folks out in Austin this weekend, and I was like, "Are you coming to the race?" And they're like, "No, we don't want to spoil Drive to Survive." I was like, "Are you kidding?" They're like, "No, we don't watch. We just watch Drive to Survive."
That's awesome.
Whatever floats your boat.
So
I love
you
it. Takes all
some
sorts.
US fans then, right?
Honestly, so many.
Yeah.
Austin is a great example. That race at one point was financially unviable. It was really looking like it wasn't going to survive.
Yeah.
And now you've got 500,000 people turning up every weekend.
All the celebrities.
You can't move.
Yeah.
It's one of the best attended races that you go to all season long. It's incredible just to see that turnaround. And I think Austin has a huge role, actually, and one we should really be very cognizant of in helping Formula One to find its feet here in the States.
Yeah.
Because F1 has been to more locations in America than any other country on earth. There have been more Grand Prix venues here than anywhere else. But it was only when it got to Austin that it found somewhere where it could put down its roots and really establish itself.
Yeah.
And I think without that race,
The US home.
a proper home.
Yeah.
I don't know if Liberty would have been as interested in getting involved in the sport.
Yeah.
I think that had a huge part to play in it. And then just to allow the sport to, start to move out.
Yeah.
And really establish itself. Austin played such a huge role in that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you like Las Vegas?
I do, but it's very different. Every Grand Prix venue is unique.
Yeah.
Singapore is different to Silverstone. Right. Miami is different to Monaco. Everywhere's unique. So Vegas does it the Vegas way. I was really impressed with the quality of the racing we had last year. I was not expecting that.
Right.
And
we didn't know what to expect at Vegas.
And what a race.
Yeah.
What a brilliant race.
Right.
And on the basis of how close this season has been, again, I can't wait, because I think it's going to be box office.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it could be a good one for
sure.
Yeah. But I love how you wrote this book for folks who don't really understand the depth of the sport, and the history.
Yeah,
too.
like if you are a long-term fan of the sport, I hope you'll enjoy it, and it will remind you of some of the great, because even for me, it reminded me of some of the great stories of the great champions and the great drivers and those great periods, and just spark those little moments of joy.
For you to finish this?
So it was a year from concept to finish writing, 18 months from the start to it actually being published.
Wow. And it came out in the US.
Came out in the US first, and then a European release. But what's been really lovely are the people who've contacted me or sent me photos of them reading it to their kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that means the world, because the kids want to learn about their history, and then the parents and the kids have this little moment of kind of like shared love. And I remember as a kid, watching races with my dad, and so if that's helping to create that crossover, then that's something of which I'm immensely pleased.
Was it
proud.
easy to write this book for you? Were there some challenges writing?
Oh, huge challenges. Mostly, if anyone's ever been my editor, and the folks at Racer will remember when I used to write columns for Racer, I cannot stick to a word count. I can't do it. I'm terrible. I always write too much. So Yeah,
That's not a bad problem to have as a writer, though.
Well, man, but here's the thing, right? So we're talking about 450 words per champion.
Per champion, yeah.
If you're doing a Fangio or a Clark, right, whose career was 5-6 years,
you got plenty of stuff to write about,
If it's Fernando, who's done 20 years, what do you keep in?
What do you? Yeah, exactly. And he's got another,
and particularly for me, who likes to write a lot. I think I probably wrote about 3,000 words for Fernando, and they were like, "It needs to be 400. Go away, rewrite it, come back." That was the chat. That was a big.
That's
challenge.
a challenge.
That's a big challenge. But making sure that
it's a good
So
problem.
as I say, it's never going to be you're never going to get everything. But what I hope it gives you is just an overview of why we stellify these guys, why we still talk about them, why they are the lens and the barometer by which we, recognize talent today. When we're talking about a Max, when we're talking about a Lewis, when we're talking about the greats today and their achievements on track, and we compare it to any of the names that are in this book. Why? Who were they? Why were they great? Why do we still talk about them today? And what made them special? What made them memorable? And I just want people to have that as a reference guide, and hopefully something they'll enjoy
awesome
reading.
Book. Yeah, it's an awesome book. Congratulations!
Thank you so much, mate.
It's go pick it up. It's definitely something that I appreciated very much, and it's beautiful too. You can just have it on as a nice coffee table.
Keep it on the coffee table.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's beautiful.
It's a good coaster.
Will, lastly, we ask all of our guests. The podcast is called The Creative Drive.
Okay.
So, what is your creative drive?
Oh, that's a great question. I think when you're creating, certainly in broadcasting, I love being a part of a team, and I've been really fortunate over the years to work with some incredible people who've been great mentors for me. Lee Diffie at NBC Sports was a brother and a mentor for me, and one of my greatest cheerleaders. Jason Swales as a producer who I worked with for many years, similar. But all the way going back, people who took a chance on me and gave me these opportunities, from David Tremaine and Joe Sayward, all the way through to the folks at Speed Channel and at NBC and then at Liberty. They entrusted me, despite having no experience, to do a job that I was wholly unqualified to do.
Yeah, that's when you have to sort of tell yourself, I'm just going to do it, right? Screw it. I got to jump in.
What carries you through all of that is having a great team around you and working for that team, not just with them, but working for them and giving yourself completely to what you do. I think when it comes to creativity, not being content with enough, just doing enough. Mediocrity in me, I find that very difficult to just settle for. That's good enough. No. I want it to be great. It needs to be of a certain standards. Otherwise, I won't be happy. So I think it's finding yourself, a team of people who think like you and want the same as you. Try to be that band leader. Try to be that person that, I hope that at some point, someone will think of me what I think of the likes of a Lee Diffie or a Jason Swales, who helped me so much in my career. Find those good people, work with them, and never be content with mediocrity.
That's very interesting that you say that. Most people think journalists as lone wolves, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned, team.
You can't achieve anything alone. You take inspiration and influence from everyone every day. I watch so many broadcasters and watch what they do and watch their craft and take inspiration always on how can I improve, how can I be better, what can I do that I'm not doing right now. I watch back all my broadcasts and I'm, that wasn't quite right, or I could have done that better, or, I think you've got to be self-critical and you've got to always strive for more.
Right.
And that's sort of keeps you motivated, or keeps you going.
Well said. Well said. Will, how can people find you? How do they follow you? What's up with you next?
So long as they don't want to say nasty things to me, they're very free to do that. Instagram and we call it X now, I guess. W Buxton official on both of those. Is the easiest way. That's it.
Website. Go find them. Follow.
Thanks.
And don't say nasty things about it.
Don't say nasty things.